Hey, I'm Nick Schade. Welcome to Gila Kayaks. Today I'm working on the microBootlegger Sports strip-built sea kayak build. I'm going to be working on the coaming some more and doing some more scraping. I think I'll get the coaming on the deck and then flip it over so I can start scraping the interior of the deck. I'd like to get both the deck and the hull scraped out today. We'll see how far we get.
Epoxy's dry on the risers, so I can strip off the clamps. Here is the lip that I fiberglassed yesterday, and that's going to get installed on top like this. I just want to do some cleanup on this, do some cleanup on the top surface of the riser, and that'll get assembled right on top just like that. I think that'll look pretty cool. I'm just giving the outside surface of the riser a sanding because I'm going to put another coat of epoxy on that when I go ahead and glue on the lip. I'm just trying to make it nice and smooth, and with the additional coat of epoxy, I'm just making sure that that surface is completely sealed. Dry fit the coaming, see what it looks like. I gotta choose what side's the upside and what side's the downside. So it looks like it's gonna fit on just fine. There's a little bit of overlap all the way around. So I've mixed up some epoxy. Now I'll add a little bit of the milled fiber to it. This milled fiber, it's interesting. It doesn't seem to thicken the epoxy substantially. It'll mix in and it often settles to the bottom. You got to keep on stirring it while you're using it, but it doesn't seem to thicken the epoxy in any way. And then I'll add some of the colloidal silica, and this will thicken the epoxy. And I don't know how much I add, just enough to thicken it up a bit. The colloidal silica seems to have trouble mixing in smoothly. There tends to be large blobs of unmixed colloidal silica in there. So give it a good thorough stirring, try and break those up. All right, and so it still flows, but it's a little bit more likely to stay in place. You know, it sticks to the side of the stirring cup much more readily than without the silica in there. So I'll start by just painting some of this on the bottoms, the whole bottom side. Try and make a smoother surface there, filling that weave. So I spread it on the whole bottom side, just trying to make a smooth surface and filling that weave. With this, with the colloidal silicone there, it goes on a little milky. It does tend to clear up a little bit, but again, this is the underside. I've put it on fairly thick. I'm going to grab my heat gun and just use the heat gun to level that out a little bit. I'll now just put this aside and work on the riser. Again, I want to spread a little bit of this epoxy on the outside surface of the riser. Again, just filling that surface, making sure it's got a good thick coat of epoxy on it to seal the grain of that plywood. Now I'm just going to take the deck off the forms, put it over on top of the hull, just so I can take apart the forms and get them out of the way. I'll set up the cradles and lay the deck back in the cradles. Part of the reason I'm doing that right now is the epoxy's a little bit runny, and it would be great to have any sags sag towards the newly installed lip instead of down onto the deck. I'm just going to quickly move it out of the way, get the forms out of the way, and replace it back where it was. All right, so it's all flipped over. Looks good. At this point, the coaming is just about done. I'm going to be working on scraping and sanding the interiors. There's several reasons for the inner stem that you see here. One of them was just to have a landing spot for the strips as I was building the boat. Another is it's really hard to get all the way up in the ends there with the scraper to clean it up. By having this inner stem, you only need to go up this far. I will probably come in later and do a little bit of a fillet to take care of any gaps up in there, but with a nice little scraper here, I can get all the way into that end, clean it all up, make it really presentable in there. The boat does like to move around in these forms too, so to prevent it from sliding back and forth, I like to just put some tape both ends, and that'll just keep it from sliding around a bit. When we're scraping the interior and trying to do our initial shaping, what we want to do is get rid of any steps between one strip and another. As we're going down here, this strip has a little bit of a step up to that strip. We want to feel that. It's even more critical is we don't want any sort of overhanging steps. So down here, this strip is a little bit higher than this strip. Just from the perspective of applying fiberglass and epoxy here, when we're fiberglassing here and laying the epoxy down, a step up like this, the epoxy will stick into. An overhanging step where there's an air gap below it, the epoxy will tend to run out of. So ideally we don't want any steps at all, but we particularly don't want overhanging steps. So when we're scraping, we're trying to get rid of those steps. So with the first pass here, you can see that the strips come together like this and they're concave. And our initial scraping ends up removing wood from the middle of this strip on either side of the seam. We want to get it down so it's a smooth, continuous curve here. We're getting rid of most of those pencil marks. We still have a place in here where we haven't reached everything, and we have some spots up here where the seam is still a little bit low, and back in here there's still a substantial discontinuity. So that's getting pretty good. Still a couple places, feeling something right in there. This we can still see a little bit of the glue there, but definitely feels a whole lot better. As we go forward here, you can see where I have not hit yet and what that looks like relative to what we have hit. So a little bit more work to be done along here at the top edge. It can be tricky with the top edge because there's nothing supporting it here. So when I work along the edge, I'll often put my hand right behind where I'm working, just as a little bit of support. That lets me get right up along that edge. You want to be careful when you're pulling that you don't come up here over the edge, and you can end up tearing away that whole corner. We want to pretty much leave as much material up here on the deck hull joint as possible to have a good strong joint there. Also, be careful with these tools that you choose a tool that's matching the curvature. If I were to use this tool, you can see that gap back there. I'd end up with a big groove up here and a big groove down there. That's not what I'm looking for. So with this one, that's a little bit better. That's a lot better. So ending up with a choice of contours on your tool will make life a lot easier and you'll have better results. I do that primarily by having a choice of different tools. And so I'm constantly choosing a tool that's the best match for what I'm doing. Here's that seam I repaired the other day that I filled in with thickened epoxy, wood flour, and a little stain. Let's see how this cleans up with the paint scraper. We still first have the chunks of hot melt glue to get rid of there. That cleans up pretty well. So that's it for today. I got the coaming all assembled and I got both the deck and the hull pretty much scraped out. So the next episode should be sanding and shaping out the coaming a little bit. I'll not do a fine sanding job on this. It's going to be the interior of the boat. My plan at this point is to put a carbon Kevlar cloth on the inside. So that's not going to let you see the surface of the wood. So I don't need a fine finish. I'm actually better off with a fairly rough finish that'll give more purchase for the epoxy. So with the coaming, I'm going to take a round over bit and round over the top and bottom of the riser. That should make it look really nice. So I'm really pleased with how it's coming along. Again, sanding, router, that should be it for the next episode. So if that's the case, the interior fiberglassing / carbon Kevlar cloth application should be coming up pretty soon. If you have any questions at this point about anything I've done so far, the scraping, the sanding, fiberglassing, epoxy work, the coaming, anything, please feel free to post something in the comments. I'd like to be able to answer your questions. If you haven't already done so, hit like, hit subscribe, turn on notifications. If you're really into it and you want to see videos a little bit early, go over to Patreon, chip in a little bit to help support the production of these videos. I really appreciate every bit of support. So until next episode, thanks for watching and happy paddling.